So this video is dedicated to all of the near-death experiences that have been occurring and have taken the world by storm in the past 70 years. This video has been 2 weeks in the making. It takes hours upon hours to make a compilation. Every story from the people you will hear in this video was at least an hour long each. And I had to go through every single one of them to create this video. All of the people that you will hear in this video are trying to describe the exact same thing. And you will see it's difficult to put into words, but these experiences that these people have are incredible. They're describing laws that are completely different than the laws that govern this physical universe, this physical dimension that we live in now. So all that being said, keep an open mind and enjoy the video.
I was an atheist. I believed in nothing.
I grew up in a very scientific home.
If there's a God that could allow this to happen, why would I be so excited to go there when who could favor that person and then hurt that person, you know, and it just...
I knew with 100% certainty that when you die, the end, no more.
Modern neuroscience will try and tell you that consciousness itself is a complete illusion. In other words, that it's just those subatomic particles, atoms, molecules in the brain, creating this illusion of consciousness, but no, they're just following natural laws.
The idea that when someone died, somehow their spirit, their consciousness would go on to have some other experience was absolutely ludicrous, because there was what we believe no scientific proof for that.
I was constantly praying. I was constantly asking God, please, please, please let them be free of their suffering and pain. And I couldn't pray anymore. It was too painful to pray, and to have it continue to get worse so many times, it was just breaking me.
I noticed that my consciousness separated from my body.
And my spirit came out of my body as if you would take a glove off your hand.
And my spirit came up out of my body, at my chest, ran up to the ceiling, and I turned and I looked down, and I could see myself lying there on the bed.
And I noticed that in the bed that I had been occupying, it had an occupant. And as I looked at the occupant in my bed, it looked remarkably like me.
I was aware of my body lying there on the hospital bed,
which I thought was odd, and so I stepped closer to look, to realize I was looking at me, or my body. I was not that, and that was a profound realization. I'm not my body.
That big piece of disgusting meat in that bed is not me.
I mean, it looks like I'm dead. That's clearly my body. But I'm up here, and I've never felt more alive.
And I thought, I've lost my mind, because that would be crazy. And I'm not crazy. Matter of fact, I'm having clarity like I've never had in my life before.
It was as though my consciousness was far bigger than my body, and the body actually looked insignificant to me. I was aware of everything the doctors were doing. I was aware of my family. My mother was praying to Shiva and Ganesh.
I knew that I had been underwater too long to be alive, but I felt more alive than I've ever felt.
I'm more alive than anybody can imagine. I mean, this is the height of the experience of life.
It just was like here, except much more intensely real.
At this point, you think you're still alive.
Oh yeah, I felt more alive than I've ever felt in my whole life. My eyesight, my hearing, my taste, my touch, all my senses were heightened.
Everything about the spirit world is more real than this world.
When you leave the physical and you go back to the spiritual, the physical here, it seems dead. It seems non-existent.
The colors are brighter, the edges of everything are sharper, the emotions are just enhanced, they are clear.
I saw light and colors there that simply don't exist here on Earth. This is the most real experience of my existence.
Really?
It is.
Far sharper, crisper, and more real than this. This is very dreamlike by comparison.
On that side, the colors are way more clear and intense, and this is kind of the blurry place. This is the black and white TV realm, and there it was just like it is as it really is. And so the planet was just beautiful. So I didn't have a reason to think that I was dead. Then as this happened, there was a glow that came in over me.
There was also this brilliant orb of light, brighter than 1,000,000 stars, very clear and pure light that had fine white and gold tendrils off of it.
I started seeing a white light while he's telling me Seth, stay with me. Seth, stay with me.
The darkest dark I had ever been in, and suddenly there was light. And I was a little bit confused.
I opened my eyes, and I was full of liquid light, love, encased 2 to 3 feet around me, pure light and pure love.
I had read stories of tunnels of light and things like that, but here I was in light.
And as I looked ahead, there was this pure white light. It was whiter than the whitest snow and brighter than 10,000 suns, and yet I could look right at it, and it was compelling.
Next minute, radiant light pierces through the darkness and draws me out.
But then I saw a pinpoint of light, and I was attracted to that light.
A light appeared in the darkness, unbelievably, impossibly brilliant white light.
That brighter light would be compared to perhaps your sun here on the brightest day by another 100,000 times, if you could imagine it.
If it were in this world, I would have been fried.
I felt a presence come up behind me that was so overwhelming. It was so powerful. It was so cosmic. It was so wise. It was so ancient. And yet it was so absolutely personal and absolutely loving.
I could see that it was a being, a person that was emanating this light. The light was flowing from him.
And out of this light emerged hands and arms which reached down and picked me up and brought me up and held me against this person in this light.
But he just held his arms out as I ran into them, and he held me, and he loved me unconditionally. And there was a humorous nature about this man.
I was immediately and absolutely overcome with a very, very physical sensation of being held.
It was like I was embraced by this feeling of total unconditional love. It's really hard to describe this feeling because it's much more powerful than any kind of love that I've ever experienced in physical life before.
I felt those divine arms wrap around and hold me. And being brought up in a biblical home, the words, "I am that I am," kept coming to me as I was being held by this divine creator.
And as I got closer, I knew who this man was. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, just like I would know a grandfather or a grandmother, I knew that he was Jesus Christ. And I began to rush to him. And I never, ever want to leave you again, almost chastising him for having had to have this separation from him.
At that exact same instant, out of this brilliant light stepped the most amazing being I have ever met. Said, "Stand up, you're in the presence of the Son of God." But it was Jesus Christ himself. I swear I felt like he was my absolute best friend that I had ever met.
All of a sudden, I just found the best friend I've ever had in my whole life and have today. You know, the one who really knows me. More than my mother, more than my wife, you know, he knows me.
I looked into the eyes of the warmest, kindest, most wonderful. I knew this was the Son of God, and all of a sudden my knees buckled, my legs lost their strength, and I just went down. I couldn't stand.
I watched the waves of light open, and I saw Jesus with his hands outstretched, dazzling white robes. It's as though he had clothed himself in garments of light.
What I realized was, yes, Christ was holding me, but the fact is Christ would be holding any one of us, if you ask.
Now, how did you know that this being was Jesus?
I knew him. I remembered him. It was a recognition.
I said, "Well, are you the true light?" His response to me was, "Ian, God is light."
And it was incredible. I was standing in the presence of Almighty God. And instantly I knew I would never die for eternity.
He's made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here, meaning going towards the world of light.
He spoke to me for the first time. His words, his voice into my mind, "We don't make mistakes. You do belong here." And I thought, "You know what I think?" And he said, "I know everything you've ever thought." And I thought, there are things I don't want you to know that I've thought. And you know what happens when you think about things that you don't want people to know you're thinking about? You think about them!
In my mind, I pictured one of my favorite objects in the whole world, a breast. And I went, "See, like that."
And he laughed and laughed, and he thought that was really funny, and I didn't think it was so funny.
He said, "What's wrong with that?"
And he said, "It's okay. I know everything about you." And I'm like, he knows everything about me, and he loves me this much? This is, whoa. And he began to rub my back and fill me with his love. It was the most wonderful sensation of love I've ever had.
And yet, here was a being that knew everything about me, and he totally accepted me and he totally loved me. Now that blew my mind.
I was ready to feel the guilt or the judgment, but all I felt from him was pure, unconditional love. And I realized that all he had ever felt for me was unconditional love. It was truly unconditional in that for the first time in my life, I felt I didn't have to do anything to deserve it. I was loved just because I existed. I realized that love gets very distorted in this dimension, in this realm.
I thought, he knows my name, he knows my thought before I even speak, then he must see all my sins. And I said, God, but I've cursed you, and started telling him my sins. And each sin I told him, more love.
And what I was being told, not with words, but just with pure energy, is there are no mistakes. There's nothing to forgive.
I was comforted and reassured that everything was fine.
I felt as though their lives were perfectly fine without me, and that it would be okay for me to go on without them.
My husband would be fine, my 4 young children would be fine, regardless of whether I lived or died.
And somehow I knew this being was going to take care of me for eternity.
Began to comfort me in the most awful moment of my life.
But what struck me, absolutely, it actually fell to my knees, was the amount of peace and love that I felt.
And I saw that light, and everything just went away, and I felt better. And I felt calm and relaxed.
I wasn't scared. I wasn't upset. I was so blissed out. It was the most amazing bliss I've ever felt in my life. That place is so euphoric and divine.
I was in the most beautiful place that I'd ever been.
Is this the kingdom of heaven? Is that Almighty God?
I was transferred immediately into a spiritual dimension. I was in a spiritual world. Instantaneously, I knew this was the real world.
Except I remembered it. People talk of heaven or spirit world or whatever. I call it home. I was home.
I was absolutely overcome with the sense of being home, of being where I really belong.
Then I was taken to the most magnificent garden. It was very beautiful with trees and flowers of all colors, and the grass was very crisp and very cool under my feet. It was as though every blade of grass had intelligence. It was wonderful.
And I remember ascending up into this brilliant greenery, lush with life, and there would be flowers and blossoms, buds on trees that would open up even as we flew by. I remember the rich textures and colors beyond the rainbow, and so beautiful.
I am so happy that I am weeping.
It's beyond words. It's wonderful beyond words.
I began to rush to him, and I said to myself over and over as I was running, I'm home, I'm finally home, and I never ever want to leave you again.
It was incredibly beautiful and peaceful. And
how do you describe it? Everything's perfect. It's all made by God, and it's all made into perfection. I remember the first thing I noticed was, if I may, just the grass. The grass was so incredible, just took my breath away, because I never seen grass that was wild and perfectly manicured, yet no human being had to touch it. Light came through the grass from the source of the light, which is God himself. It pulsated in the grass. It was perfection. It looked more like velvet, and that's just the grass.
So many people talk about the grass, and they can't stop describing it.
There was this humongous group of people and angels.
There were hundreds of souls dancing,
moving in praise and swaying with the music, and talk about oneness and unity and love.
Sound, music, vibration, frequency is the way that our souls transcend in these levels. It's one of the reasons why chants have been used for thousands of years to help engender deep transcendental conscious states.
There's life in music. The light is full of life and love, and all the colors in the rainbow are in it, but I knew it was coming from God. I knew it. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew this was God. There was a path that I was moving on.
Beautiful path that not only was exploding with beauty and color, but the absolute purity of God's love. And this path was so beautiful, and it was as though I could not only see it and appreciate the beauty, but it was something I could taste and hear and experience. It's a very strange thing. It was as though it was all colors simultaneously, but their essence.
And it almost is translucent and living, because it glows, it is iridescent, It's shimmering. It's quite breathtakingly beautiful.
There's people to the left that were just gathering. In fact, it looked like a few of them were getting in place just as I arrived. And it made me think that they were getting there to welcome me.
I was immediately greeted by a group of people, beings, spirits. I'm never really sure what to call them because those words mean different things to different people.
I was greeted by what they explained to me was like a greeting party that meets us all. And many of you, if you've had loved ones that were dying, this is part of their graduation party or greeting party.
I knew that these people were there to greet me. I knew that I had known them as long as I existed. And I knew that they had known me and loved me as long as I existed.
I had the impression that I knew her from a long time ago.
Throughout all my time here on earth, but also they had known me when I was in heaven before I came to earth.
And it was so moving that I think I probably spent the first 10, 20 minutes with her crying and sobbing. And
God had me welcomed by the most wonderful, loving, kindest people ever.
I absolutely believe that God sends His most gentle messengers to greet you and welcome you and guide you.
And yet none were what we would call blood family. And I looked at these wonderful people, great smiles with genuine hearts. By the way, all of the light is still coming from God. Through the wall, through the people, through me. These are my brothers. These are my sisters. And everybody was about the same age. Nobody was old or decrepit. There was nothing wrong with anybody. And everybody looked about your age, if I may say. But yeah, they looked around 30-ish, in that era. And it was clear that the most important family is my spiritual brothers and sisters. And there's millions, hundreds of millions. If you don't have family, you will love heaven because you have millions waiting for you. And others have family in heaven already. And the great news about that is we'll be able to connect again and have this wonderful fellowship with our family.
I described them as being dressed in peasant garb, very simple clothing.
They were wearing these robes of sorts and were very brilliant.
Beautiful colors and tremendous joy and merriment. There were lots of children playing and dogs jumping, and it was just a wonderful festival.
So was it like a welcoming committee?
It was exactly like a welcoming committee. I recognized all of them. All the people I saw were people I had known in life who had gone before me. They'd all died. And you know what? They were all people who had a spiritual impact on my life.
Oh, really?
And so they're all surrounding me, and they were marvelous. They were perfect. They looked incredibly beautiful.
I had a young woman come up to me at a certain point. I didn't recognize her, but I was fine with her. She seemed nice, and I wanted to be polite, and so she gave me this information about her. She was giving me information about her life, personal stuff to her. She was saying things like, tell them I'm free, tell them I'm not in any pain, tell them that I am happy, I have joy now. She said, tell them that before I went, I had started to sing, and that brought me joy, and I really loved singing.
I could see inside, and there were many other angels, spirits. Again, I'm not quite sure what to call them, but they were all very busy, and I knew they were all busy doing God's work. I don't know what it was, but they were all very busy. I knew that was essentially the entrance to heaven, whatever term you want to use, and I could hardly wait to get there.
And I can tell you that when I was there, my first thought was, how come I'm here? I don't believe in you. I don't believe that this could be for me because I'm an atheist. And the answer I got back was, you're my child, welcome home. I thought, as a Catholic girl, I'd end up in hell for being an atheist. And here I was in this beautiful, loving, peace-filled place.
This is not home. You're strangers in a strange land, folks. You know that. You feel it because it's true. That's home. That's where we can give our love without hesitation, without restriction, and that's where we can receive all the love that we were created to exist in the first place. And that's where everything good, everything beautiful, everything that's worthwhile is, and we get to be a part of it and explore it and learn it and experience it in time without any measure.